Good evening and welcome to the Aspen Institute's Conversations with Great Leaders in honor of Preston Robert Tisch. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'd also like to welcome you to Roosevelt House, which is the Public Policy Institute for Hunter College, and we are honored to have the president of Hunter here today, Jennifer Robb, who has been a partner in all of the Aspen Institute's programs here in New York City. If you haven't been here, this is the home literally of Sarah, Eleanor, and Franklin Roosevelt from about 1904 till, I believe, the 30s, the one in Washington, the white one, and for those of you sitting on that side, you were in Eleanor and Franklin's home. For those of you sitting here, you were in Sarah's home. So welcome. So Roosevelt House is also the home in New York to the Aspen Institute. The Institute has many of its public programs here, and we're just honored to be here. The Conversations with Great Leaders program began in 2009. It was started by the Aspen Institute with the support of Laurie Tisch, who is here, Steve Tisch, and John and Lizzie Tisch, in honor of their father, who was a true civic leader for New York City and more broadly, and in fact really inspires, I think, many of us to think about what leadership means in America, in New York, in business and civic society, and it continues to inspire, even though he passed away a number of years ago. The leaders that participate in the series reflect his values, values-based leadership. Tonight's speaker is known for her award-winning work in film and television, as well as for her activism in areas of film and social justice. She's a Harman Eisner Artist in Residence at the Aspen Institute, and this year she was named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people, a list I keep trying to get to. Not happening. In the article in the magazine, tennis great Venus Williams described Ava as someone who makes it her mission to tell important stories and to empower important storytellers. Her films and documentaries certainly attest to this description of her work and her mission. We'll hear more about all of that this evening in conversation with Aspen Institute Arts Program Director Damien Wetzel. In addition to his Aspen gig, Damian is director of the Vail International Dance Festival, as well as director of the demo program at the Kennedy Center. And prior to his work in arts leadership, and again, not being a slacker, Damian had a 20-year career as the principal dancer at the New York City Ballet. And next year, he becomes the 7th president of Juilliard School. So you are in for a very interesting and fun evening. And I now turn it over to Dr. Woetzel.
Thank you so much, Rick. Welcome. So before I introduce Ava formally and we come up and have a conversation, we thought we'd start actually with a little film. So if you can roll the film and then we'll have a conversation.
Together, we believe that what the illusion of supremacy has destroyed, the truth of equality can nourish. Thank you.
Hold your applause, until I say it's a picture wrap on David Oyelowo and Carmen Ejogo. He did it!
I've never seen anyone with such intense, passionate, willful, and clear direction, and yet be such a calming force as well.
White, black, and otherwise, come to Selma.
I heard about the attack of innocent people. I couldn't just stand by.
Looks like an army out there.
This revolution goes on and on. This revolution goes on and on. Mine eyes have seen the glory, 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 hallelujah.
Once she hooks you, she doesn't let you go. These characters don't let you go.
She wants her audiences to step inside someone else's life, inside their mind, and to therefore be changed.
Few directors capture the beauty of us as black people like Ava.
It's time to focus on family.
Sweet dreams are made of this.
She has a real consciousness about the kind of messages and energy she wants to put out into the world.
He's trapped by a darkness that's actively spreading throughout the universe. And the only one who can stop it is you. Be a warrior.
I'll try.
Sweet dreams are made of this. Who am I to decide?
You're going to be tested every step of the way. Trust nothing.
Darling, time for dinner. Are you lost?
The only thing faster than light is the darkness.
1 out of 4 human beings with their hands on bars, shackled, in the world are locked up here in the land of the free.
Some people got the real problem.
Animals, beasts that needed to be controlled.
You better believe it.
You should go looking somewhere high.
I know, right?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here.
So we're going to have a little conversation, and then I hope you'll have a conversation with us, and we'll ask some questions, and so we'll do that. But I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for joining us tonight, for kind of throwing down as an artist in residence. The artist in residence program at the Aspen Institute started over a decade ago with Anna Deavere Smith. Went on to Jesse Norman and Chuck Close and Yo-Yo Ma, and now Ava, you join us, and
What
it is
company? Wow,
it is
so honored.
well, you know, one of the things that I think all those artists share is a sense of the collaborative. That life is not a journey of a one-way journey that goes in the directions that you can always dictate and always imagine. And we did something in the last hour. We met with some students from Hunter College upstairs. From a variety of disciplines. There were media studies, but also poli-sci and a novel writer. And the first question I asked you was, you know, what you hope for their education or to be educated. And you corrected me right off the bat, and just it was so right and so about that two-way street. So when we got to have the art in the room for a minute, I was thinking about that, and I was also thinking about that particular relationship between film and an audience, which is not two-way in the act, in a sense. People arrive, they sit down, they may be in community, there may be things that happen before, after. But I was thinking about that phrase that our mutual friend Sarah put in her Aperture issue about the mind's eye. Mm-hmm. About, you said, and I should just quote it effectively, good luck with that. We use the phrase, the mind's eye, for a reason. The images we consume become a part of our DNA. They become a part of our mind, our memory. Can you talk about that a little bit, that idea of what you're doing, the actual act of the art, the artistic habit, of creating our own internal cameras?
Yeah. I remember I was on one that day. I was like, what was I thinking? I was thinking all kinds. Sometimes you're just on it. Your mind just goes wild that day. People quote that back to me. I was like, what was I saying? I was like, what was I thinking that day? But I think I'm always trying to interrogate this idea of what our art does once it's received by audience. I'm always thinking about that relationship between what I make and what the audience receives. And what I love most is the fact that I have no clue what people are going to get out of what I make. I always get the question, always get the same question at the end of an interview or a Q&A. What would you like people to know and take from your work? And I always give the same answer. I don't want them to think or take anything that I decide for them. I want them to take what they will and think what they will. And if they take away anything or are activated to think about anything, I've won and I'm a success, right? But I don't want to prescribe or dictate what that is by giving it meaning and saying, this is what this means. And so in thinking about my relationship between my art making and my art practice and the audience, I really feel like it's a lens. If I put a certain lens on a camera, if I put a 35 or a lens that's a 100 millimeter lens, if I put these different lenses on, whatever I'm looking at, it changes, right? So I make those decisions and I put them all on the film. But each audience member has their own lens, their own experience, their own family memories, what your husband said this morning, the fact that your pants are too tight and you just wish you wore the other ones. Whatever you're coming into the seat with is all a part of the lens that you're using to process what I've made on any given day. And those images, as they come into your mind's eye, become a part of your bloodstream, your memory, your DNA, right? Haven't you watched something one day and then watched a year later and be like, oh, I like it now, or I hated it then, or I thought I hated that film, but it was really good, or I love this film, and then you watch it and you think, that film is stupid, right? And so it's just the moment that you see it, that you take it in, it becomes internalized, it becomes a part of you. That relationship is something that I continue to struggle with because you have to let the art go. Right? So while I always say, oh, I don't want to, dictate meaning or put any meaning on a thing, I have to wrestle away this idea of what my art means every single time I make something, right? And I have to really understand that people are processing it in their own way from where they are at any given moment. Everyone watching 13th is not going to agree. They don't even see black people as people. They don't understand that prison is just a place where bad people go. So there's nothing that I can say that's going to get through that, and I have to let go of that and really let the art be a true offering. And that's a constant reworking of my relationship with audience. As much as I can say, oh, I don't give meaning, I don't want to say what I want people to think, it's a cute answer for a different, deeper untethering to my own work that I think I've been trying to process. And I just encourage other artists to do. It's helpful. It's like when you get the bad review or the person that just takes out their cell phone in the middle of the ballet. I'm sure it's happened to you. I don't know. Right? Where you just, it's like, are you doing that now? Is this happening? It's about, look, I'm going to offer this to you, that painting, that sculpture, this dance, this film to you. And it's only in the offering that what I do matters. It's not in the way that it's even received. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. But is that to say that tension of rigor that you apply in the making of the art is relaxed in the once the gift has been given?
And that's where the challenge is. If you're so rigorous, if you're so disciplined, so focused on the making, which as makers and as artists we are, and then even further as a filmmaker, I have to be completely immersed in the marketing of the piece, right? Because that is important as well for me to cut through the clutter of everything else that's in Times Square, right? So that you really know that A Wrinkle in Time is coming on March 9th. It's just what we have to do. Then I gotta let it go on March 9th. You know what I mean? You have to turn that corner. And it's something that I really, my goal, I don't know how long it'll take, it may be my whole career, but I hope I get the opportunity to practice this much more. There's a moment where you really have to let it go. I've seen the pain. I was a publicist before I was a filmmaker. The pain that artists go through in the reception. And I've talked to a lot of artists that say, but that's what art is. It's the receipt by the audience, right? And I get it. It is true. I just have to know that I delivered it properly. with everything that I had, and I made sure, even in the marketing publicity, that I got to you. I can give it to her. Give it to her on a silver platter, however I can get it to her. But what she thinks, I can't control, I can't mourn, and I can't celebrate too much, right? I have to stay in a middle place so that I can stay free enough to go to the next. I think that's what I was trying to share with, in a small way with the students earlier as they were starting their art practice.
Yeah.
It's a progressive, it's a path, it's a journey. It's not easy.
So, again, thinking about that idea of the actual practice of it and then the audience part, I was thinking a little bit as you were talking of, so I get to work, not to name drop, with Yo-Yo Ma a lot on various things. Totally name dropping on that. And what's interesting in this context is I've seen Yo-Yo in his rigorous
Is that what
moments.
we call him? Just Yo-Yo in real life?
We call him Yo-Yo.
No, I just wondered,
But
Yo?
Yo-Yo.
Yeah.
Yo-Yo. And then he's rigorous about his own work, but he's been doing it a while. He's got it. He's not, And then there's Yo-Yo in like the second grade classroom, which is about a different kind of sharing and intensity about developing voice in the kids and lots of different aspects that comes in and he looks at it as an opportunity and like, what can I do here? What could I possibly add? And then I've seen him with young musicians. That's something else entirely. Suddenly the rigor comes back in that frame. So I was thinking about you as, your leadership, as you're directing the film, the documentary, and then there's the leadership in being a trailblazer in the industry, opening up doors for women and people of color. I'm not sure, I'm curious if the same kind of relaxation that you apply to your own work applies when you're the one promoting the other people's work. Do you kick into, I'm going to make this happen in a different way than you would for your own work? Does that happen? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I hear you. I mean, like I said, I am a maniac, really, really rigorous about my filmmaking, and part of my filmmaking is the marketing and promotion of it, right? It's not finished until it's in an audience's hands. So I am completely laser focused up until that point. And then I'm in this practice of trying to let it go. And so, yeah, it's that same kind of, sometimes frenzied, but very, very focused, intentional, stick-to-itness, whether I'm advocating for what we do with Array, my collective Array, for women and people of color in the industry, whether it's me on a set. I don't think I'm the easiest person to work for, not that I'm a chair thrower or a screamer, not at all, but that I really expect you to work as hard as I'm working. I really do. And I'm working really hard.
Is that the ethic?
Oh, yeah. I've said in interviews, don't let me outwork you. And I work really hard. I think that we create a space that is inclusive, that is dynamic, that is warm, that is loving. That's the way that I try to make this so that we're all having an experience that whether the thing flops or not, you can still say, God, but we had a good time on set those 80 days, right? Like no one liked it, but gosh, that was so fun. Just the experience itself, because as a filmmaker, and I think as an artist, we get to practice and make the thing, right? And then you get to share the thing. Right? So we get it doubly so. And if at least one of those can be great. I can't predict how people will take it, but I can't control that, but I can control the experience as much as a director can, like shaping and crafting what the experience will be as much as I can. And so within that, I'm very, very tough on everyone participating in that process and bringing their best selves to it. So I would say yes, I'm pretty particular about the journey, whether it be promoting other people or advocating for what I advocate for in the industry. If I'm at the Academy and I'm talking about how, we can't have another Oscar So White, we have to really look institutionally at why this has happened, whether I'm at studios talking about and interrogating them about hiring practices, whatever I'm doing, I feel like I'm pretty about it, you know what I mean? Pretty fist in the air about it. And so what I've had trouble with personally is taking that into the audience reception space. And just because I've had success, that's not going to last forever. So if you take that kind of holding it so tightly into the offering, I think it's damaging. I've seen how it's hurt people and damaged people and diminished artists, you know what I mean? And I don't want to be that. So some of it's preventative, and it's just a more healthy way of working, I think. I'm glad I'm working out my issues in the Roosevelt House. Is it Roosevelt?
It is
Roosevelt House.
That's right. So
They never would have predicted this.
no, no wrinkle in time, right?
No, no one would have predicted this.
So
Me involved.
So we'll talk about Wrinkle in Time in a minute, and but let's talk a little bit about Array, and the mission that you're accomplishing there, and tell everybody a little bit about that so that they can take it away with them.
Yeah, no, thanks. Array is, anybody here know anything about Array? A few people. Thank you. Thelma Golden, Studio Museum of Art. She knows. She knows about Array. See, fancy people know about Array too. Array, Telaine Jones, the executive director of Array, has been working with me and kind of raising this idea from a seed into the little plant that it is now. Basically, it's a collaborative around the idea of cinematic images by women and people of color being connected with the audiences who care about films by women and people of color, right? And so we have no money. It's done all with my money from my filmmaking that over the last 10 years has gone into this idea. But over the last, I guess 8 years now, we've distributed 17 films by hand by women and people of color. That is connecting, thank you. Literally, films that otherwise would be sitting in their makers' drawers, right? You hear about all these film festivals. There's a film festival in every city. There's a film festival for every season, every occasion, every niche of person. There's a film festival. Where do those films go afterward? Where do they go? People have put their heart, their soul, they've bled, they've mortgaged everything, they've borrowed, they've made these films. And then they sit there. And overwhelmingly for women and people of color, they never get picked up and they never get shown beyond the film festival environment. And it's a shame because there's some beautiful things there. There's a kind of a film festival segregation that happens as well. If you're not in one of the finer festivals, the mainstream authenticated festivals, Sundance, Venice, Toronto, Cannes, if you're not in these top festivals, New York Film Festival, then it's not good enough. But we know traditionally and historically, those festivals favor a certain kind of film and filmmaker. No bad mouthing. I sit on the boards of some of those festivals, and we're trying to change that. So if the film festival circuit that authenticates what's great in cinema really favors one kind of film, right, and one kind of filmmaker that does not prioritize or foreground films by women and people of color, then those films are going to festivals that are more marginalized. An Urban World, a Pan-African Film Festival, Asian American, Latino film festivals around the country. No one's going to pick up films at those festivals. No distributor's going to look at the winner of Outfest, you know what I mean? Or Urban World, or the Langston Hughes African American Film Festival in Seattle, one of the most beautiful festivals I've ever gone to, and I've been to them all, where the women you land and they make you gumbo in their own house and they bring it to you, and they drive you from the airport in their own car with jazz on, and it's raining outside, and you're like, I'm here, I made it, I'm a filmmaker. This is all it's about, right? No one's going to those festivals to pick up films. So those films, the films that win there, never get picked up, except by a few outfits, and Array is one of them. And so we pick them up and we put them out and we distribute them around the country. We call every community center, museum, theater, we badger, we harass, we beg. Studio Museum of Harlem needs a screen, so we can call you and beg you. Now I know about this place. This has a screen. We'll play it here. We will play it anywhere. And we have a deal with Netflix, a really lovely deal that they've given us, where it's in theaters and community spaces around the country, and on Netflix for people to see. We've done this 17 times with a staff of 3 people, but a volunteer team of over 160 people around the country who volunteer their time to make this so. So that is what Array is, and it's been a beautiful blessing in my life. We're getting to a place now where we're starting to figure out how can we not grow and be huger, but how can we just sustain ourselves? You know, I've had a chance to sit down with Robert Redford because I'm on the board of Sundance, and I said, how is it now this, from this little idea to support independent filmmakers? How did you do it? Yes, you were a big, handsome movie star, but then what did you do? And it was a real story about how they did it. So I'm trying to Tribeca and Film Independent and South by Southwest and Sundance. Those all serve film and independent film and have programs on the periphery for women and people of color, but what about a place and an institution that's just for that, that prioritizes that, is our dream, and that's what Array is. And so that's what we're working on now with the help of like-minded people who feel the same.
I heard you used a phrase upstairs with the students. You said there's riches in the niches. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that just about the content kind of the issues around just diversity of content, and God knows some diversity of makers. But.
Oh yeah, diversity of makers, but also, I mean, look at this summer's box office. I don't know if any of you are into box office, but everything tanked. All the big movies that they thought were gonna go, nothing. There's many articles in Hollywood about the disaster of this summer's box office, because this summer the studios we're in the same antiquated mind state that everyone's gonna like this one big thing, this one big Baywatch 9, or you know what I mean, Iron Man 17. God bless them, I love them, but you know what I mean, like what they used to call the 4-quadrant film. So the audience, Hollywood splits it into 4 quadrants. If I took this room, I split it down the middle and across the middle, men, women, old, young. That's all. That's as far as it goes. We need to make a 4-quadrant film, which means I need to make Iron Man, which is a perfect 4-quadrant film. Men are gonna love it. It's testosterone. Men, Scarlett Johansson, please enter. Go right in the middle. Young, yes, okay. It's just the aspirational, the blowing stuff up, the music, the rock and roll. Older, because the stars that are in it appeal to older crowd, and the comedy's a little sly and a little, a little slippery, a little innuendo here or there. 4-quadrant film worked once. Iron Man 1, 2, 3. Like, let's keep going. Spin it off. Avengers. Robert Downey. Let's do it again. Let's duplicate it. Everyone's doing that, right? The 4-quadrant film, but it's starting not to work because people have more choice now. Riches in the niches. I don't want to see that. I don't see any of myself in it. The one person that's in it that looks like me, the woman, I don't know what she's doing. The black person has 2 lines. Sorry, but I can see there's an Asian person standing in the back nodding really intently, but he doesn't have a life, and I don't know who his mama is in this story. Like, I don't see anyone who's LGBTQIA. I don't know what's going, like, we don't have to do that anymore, because you know what? I'll just be on my Twitter for an hour. You know what I mean? Because I'll look at IG stories for an hour because people that I know in my timeline are making interesting things. I'd rather see what she's doing today rather than go pay money and go somewhere else. Or you know what? I'll stay home and watch on demand Netflix whenever I want, or Hulu, or what have you. I mean, it's changed. This is not 10 years ago where if I wanted to see a show, I had to be on ABC at this time, sit down, go through commercials, like couldn't move, couldn't tape it, couldn't do anything. Like, destination television is no more. Films in that way are no more. Everything's changed. The studios haven't quite caught up to that. I talked about it, my friend David Lowery, who made a film this summer that is one of the most exquisite films I've seen in a long time. It's called Ghost Story. It's about a guy with a sheet over his head who, literally, it's Casey Affleck with a sheet. I didn't even know it was Casey Affleck for half the movie. He just has a sheet over his head, and he I won't give it away, but he is being a ghost through the whole film. And at first they were like, I was like, ooh, this is a white people's movie. What is this movie? What is this? Is it? And I loved it. It was incredible because it's so niche-y, it's so specific. Half the people aren't even going to walk in the door to see the movie with the guy with the sheet over his head called Ghost Story. But those of us that do are going to have a very specific, interesting experience. That's where we are now, right? Interesting, the niches, the texture, the nuance. I just find that people are attracted to, in this moment, things that not even speak to them black to black or young to young, but they just want shape and something that's not just a big old mess, right? And so it's an exciting time to be a content creator, exciting time to make films. We're in the golden age of television. Do you remember this much. She just said, I love television. 10 years ago, could you say that? No, Handmaid's Tale. You know what I mean? These beautiful films on a television platform, but they're films, they're cinematic, and they have so much detail and nuance. So this is where we are. The studios haven't caught up, but they are going to be forced to. And in the meantime, content creators and artists are out there making these interesting things and finding new ways, whether it be Array or Hulu or social media, to share them with audiences. Experiences that people are gathering around images that are not being served to them by corporations. I think more and more the industry is going to be forced to move in that space, and it's time for audiences and artists to speak up and seize that moment.
So you mentioned you were formerly a publicist before you were a filmmaker. So let's maybe we could merge these topics slightly and say, so in the time you've been a filmmaker, which has been this developing time that you're speaking of, how does that feel? How does that manifest itself in your storytelling through film? Because there's such a change going on in how it's being how it could be told, how it could be shared. And I'm wondering if you're consciously adapting. You feel yourself adapting? Is it the work and the way you do it, but also what happened that you went, I've got to do this?
No, the great thing about it is having been a publicist before, I don't feel like I ever have to adapt the work because I know that I can sell you this glass of water. I could if I tried hard enough. I believe in myself. If I tried hard enough, even on a cold day, I believe I could sell you this water for $50. I could do it. I could do it. If you gave me a week to put together a campaign for this glass of water, I could have people buying it for $50. All kinds of ways coming into my head. It'd be a fantastic campaign. My publicity sense gives me the confidence to know that I can sell anything and anything can be sold, so I can make anything I want, right? I don't have to make something that the studios say this is what sells to those 4 quadrants, because I know that those lines aren't real. Those are boxes that they put them in. That's what the old is not old, and young is not young, and women is not women, and black is not black, and they all, right? And so those are boxes, not quadrants, and they're disrespectful, and they're assumptions that aren't true. So by knowing that everyone likes everything, if they are exposed to it and interested in it, that I don't have to say, no one would say, oh, Ava, they don't want that water in this glass, they want it in a tumbler, so then I changed the work to be in a tumbler. No, I know that I can sell anything, so I don't change the work. There was another question. Don't even remember.
What was the moment that you went, I'm going to
Yeah, I didn't pick up a camera
change.
until I was 32. People try and do the math, be like, damn, how old is she? I've only been doing this for about 12 years. Didn't go to film school. I got into publicity because I love movies. And I learned about publicity and that I could be on sets and be around filmmakers and see how movies got made. And get to see a whole bunch of free movies and go to premieres, and I would literally roll the red carpet on my hands and knees, and all those people you hear on the side yelling the names of the stars, someone has to call them, book them, get their parking, get them credentials, get them on the line, like that's what I would do. And I loved it. It was the best job. I would go back to it in a heartbeat. I used to have the 2 best jobs. I was a publicist and I was a waitress. I'm such a good waitress, I'm telling you. People would sit down, I'd be like, I'm getting $40 from him tonight. I'm getting $40 from him tonight, and I just work you till you leave me a $40 tip. I was so good at it. So I used to have 2 great jobs that I always know I could go back to. And so it was the moment that I was on the set as a publicist of a Michael Mann film, and it was called Collateral. And they were shooting the really good film, and they were shooting the film in East LA, and it was a young Latino villain who was in this scene with Jamie Foxx and Tom Cruise. And I was the young publicist on the side, 26 years old, just kind of watching. And just like, God, loving movie making, Michael Mann. They had these new cameras that no one had talked about, digital cameras. I said, they're not loading film into this? We're moving fast, what's happening? It was all happening, it was at night. It was in East LA. I'm from Compton, not far away. Brown people all over the place, the condors flying, that's the big light you put up at night. It lights the whole neighborhood. I was just in love with the whole thing, loved it. And then the Latino actor walks out, and no one's really paying attention to him, and So I say, hi, such and such, I have the LA Times, they're going to talk with you a little bit after. I'm there to do publicity. He's like, yes, he's a very thick accent, beautiful, a young Javier Bardem, right? A young Javier Bardem. And so he sits in the scene, and it's Jamie Foxx, and it's Jada Pinkett, and it's Tom Cruise, and we're in East LA, and the Condor's going. I was like, why does Michael Mann get to do this? Why does he get to do this? Why does he get to do this every day? I want to do it. It was in that moment. I went home and I started writing my first script. Everyone has a script in their drawer in LA, so that was not a remarkable achievement. Everyone does, but I just remember that feeling of being there and thinking, wow, this is the brown people, the place that we were. It was an LA story. I'm from here. I said, why does he get to tell this story? He's a great filmmaker, but could I tell it? How would I do it differently? This very scene, how would I do it differently? And so I started thinking about that and just decided in a crazy whim to write a short and make something. And I mean, I was I was on my way. And it took a while for me to step into filmmaking full-fledged. I made my first 2 films and I still ran my agency because I had a small agency at the time that worked with all the studios. So it wasn't until, when I won Sundance, went back and to work the next day as a publicist for other people's films. I remember my very first film. I made 4 films before I quit publicity. I only quit publicity right before SELMA. That's when most people even knew I existed, but I had made 4 films before then. And I remember on my very first film, my client at Warner Brothers called and she said, do you know there's another Ava DuVernay in town? Do you know there's a woman making films named Ava DuVernay? I swear to you. And I said, I've heard about her. I have heard about her. I was so
She is something.
She's interesting. She's got some interesting work. I was so afraid to let my clients know that I was making films or else they wouldn't want me to do their publicity. So for four whole films, I hit it. I had this whole Black Film Festival world of people who knew me that didn't know that I was a publicist for these big movies. And all my studios had no idea that I was making films until you can't hide it when you're at Sundance. People are like, this lady's the same lady. This is the same girl. And yeah, then the gig was up.
Oh man, amazing. So I want to just move and let's talk for a little while about 13th. Which is, just one of the most extraordinary films ever made. I think in every way was responding to need and has created, an entire movement around it. Aggie Gund, who was here before, created Art for Justice with Ford Foundation. Laurie is a founding donor, and it is changing the fight against mass incarceration and for prison reform. And so talk a little bit about how that came to you to do it, and then maybe even more, what your expectations and hopes are going forward around it. Is there more? Or are you, what can people think about?
It surpassed anything that I thought about, and again, with it, I'm trying to practice that idea of working as hard as I can to make it and deliver it and then let it go. But this letting go has been such a glorious, when Aggie did what she did, if anyone doesn't know, Agnes Gund, who I didn't know before, I didn't even know who she was asked by some friends if she wanted to go out one night. Very wealthy woman, philanthropist, activist in many ways that are not talked about. And a wealthy woman invited by friends to go to the New York Film Festival last year to see the opening night film. Oh yeah, I like going to opening night films. What is this one about? Well, it's a documentary. About prison. No, thank you, she says. I have a delicate constitution and I just don't want to be upset. Like I get really riled up about those things because I care about them, so I'm not going to see it. Come on, Aggie, just go out. This Thelma's one of her friends. Just come on out, Aggie, just come on. Okay, I'm going to go. So she goes out. It was a rainy night. She goes and she sees this film. 6 months later, not 6 months later, she has sold a major piece of art that she owns for $100 million to start a fund called Art for Justice, where she's encouraging other people with arts, wealthy people, to interrogate what they own and to see, is it worth selling it to better society by deconstructing and dismantling the prison industrial complex. From seeing that film, from reading Michelle Alexander's book, from talking with people around the issue, in 6 months' time, 5, 6 months' time, in cooperation with the Ford Foundation, she has a major fund, the largest fund dedicated to dismantling the prison industrial complex and interrogating mass incarceration from a movie that we made, right? So I couldn't even imagine that happening, so I don't even imagine anymore. Like I said, make it, get it to people, and then let it go, and all kinds of really incredible stories like that. Well, one of the stories that I never even really thought about was, because I assumed that it wasn't happening, but I heard from a good friend who works with incarcerated individuals and their rights inside, is the bootlegging of 13th inside prisons. They're watching it inside these prisons, these institutions. There's something that's going around on the phones, the burner phones, right? They can't do all of it, but it's going around in pieces. People are trading and sharing phones to see different pieces. I mean, I wouldn't have even thought. To educate our brothers and sisters inside about why they're there and what that is beyond your particular crime or your individual circumstance. And so, you know, 13th is a living, breathing thing. And when it is antiquated and it is the next movie comes out, it will live as a record of where we were at this time. But there's nothing else I dream for it. There's no hope for it. It's like, I guess, people who have children. That's why I call my films my children. I have 9. On my Twitter bio, it says mother of 9. People are like, ooh, that's too many kids. That's a lot of kids. But mother of 9, because you have the kids, I assume, parents out there, and then you got to let them live. You know what I mean? Let them do what they're going to do. Let them live and breathe on their own and make their own mistakes and their own discoveries, and that's what the films do out there. But 13th is, you always have a favorite. I think 13th is the favorite kid right now. It's doing some good work out there. And but the Aggie thing and so many other little things about it has really made me so proud of that work. And it's also given me a confidence that I can make something else like that, maybe, if I'm lucky, that really changes minds. Like, I can not feel hopeless about what's going on in our current political climate. That I feel so empowered that I feel like I can make a documentary on you and everything you're doing. I can do it if I wanted to, if I had time and a little bit of money. I can take you down. I can do, like, the power of film, right? Or I can produce this, or it's shown me the power of documentary film as weapon. And that's a very empowering feeling and exciting.
I have one last question, then we'll go to the audience. So you spoke earlier with the students about your directing and how you ask for truth is what I heard in it. You say, it doesn't sound quite right. Let's try that again, try this. And it seems to me that there's a real parallel between that and I can only imagine what you must have felt as you were creating 13th. That we are sharing truths, we are educating on a vast scale, or the hope was. You probably didn't, I don't know, did you know? Did you feel like it was coming? You just thought, this is true. So just talk a little bit about that idea that you believe. And so that's what you're going for, because I think that's an essential trait of leadership, in a sense, is to have that belief in a central truth of what you're seeing and to trust yourself.
Right. Well, I think part of truth is what I first came up against when I made truth as an artist. I came up against it pretty hard, and I would always, a good friend of mine, this is not a name drop. I'm just telling you a story. He did it first. He called it a name drop. But he was just telling a story about Yo-Yo. This is just a story, and it involves Oprah Winfrey. But let me just tell you this. She told me that everything that happens, you need to look at it and ask yourself why it happened. Because nothing that's happening in your life is happening randomly for no reason. It's here to show you a lesson, to teach you something, to remind you of something, to instigate something within you. That this is what life is. Everyone's path, it's not random. This is what she believes, and this is the truth of many great religions throughout the ages. And so to remember that, when that water splashes on you, the cab just splashes by, splashes all over you. I'm the one that's like, what? Now, because of her in my mind, I'm like, why? Why did it happen? I really will just walk trying to think, why? Why did this happen? Why was it? And it's interesting. Like 3 weeks later, it'll come to me. Oh, right, because I was going to go that way or something. It gets weird. It's interesting, though. You should try it. So with this, she first told me this lesson when I was getting hammered because of my articulation of history as it pertained to Dr. King, the Civil Rights Movement, and Lyndon Baines Johnson, right? LBJ. The LBJ library said, oh, we're going to get her, right? It was a GOP Republican revisionist history to the point of someone said, I said, have you heard the White House tapes? Have you heard it just use the N-word? No, it never happened. I said, it never happened. You're telling me he never said the N-word? No, the library says. No. I said, how can you say it? Let me take it out of my phone and Google. There's Google. Do you know it's a thing? Like it's YouTube. This is a thing now. You can't just lie. Of course you can. That's what it all. But just I'm gonna say it until it's true. So it got me thinking about this idea of what's true, right? What is truth? So I found myself I was on NPR and the Washington Post and the New York Times talking about truth, defending my idea of what was true. What black people on the ground had told me in Selma, what they had experienced, what my own grandmother told me she thought when she saw LBJ, how she interpreted his speeches, what she was thinking, how it connected to her, all of the research, his own writings, coming up with my idea of what his personification would be in the film as I represented the events through my mind, right? And was told again and again, that's not true. That is not true. Having to defend my idea of truth, right? Nothing's true. What's true for me right now is not true for you. I would say we'll all leave this room having a different experience of it, right? He might say, this is a great audience. I might be like, this side was good, but this side, they were a little, you know what I mean? The people in the back are having an experience from the people on this side in the middle, right? Whatever happened to you during the day, whatever your family history is, however what I'm saying hits you, we're all experiencing a different truth. So to be battling and set tripping from Compton, it's like what gangs do. Set tripping over truth is a fruitless exercise, right? And so I've really had to also really think about this idea of truth and what is true, especially in this day and age where I feel like I'm seeing things every day online and on television that are blatant lies, the difference between lies and personal truth, perspective and opinion, and lies, truth, the gray areas of all of that.
This is tough.
It's tough stuff, yeah.
What you're describing, when we are seeing blatant lies every day in ways that we don't, I feel that it's unable to equivocate. And I find myself saying, no, it is a lie, just like you with the phone.
Right.
So how do we square that with what you just said? How do we do that? Because
if I knew, I would be, but it's a constant interrogation of it, to really even for myself. You hear something and you say, that is a lie. The other day I heard him, I don't even need to, some of you might like him, it's okay. I don't even say the name, God bless him, he's gonna be okay, fine. What I'm saying is, I heard him say, while he's standing in Puerto Rico, throwing paper towels at people he says, we get an A+ in Houston, and we also get an A here in Puerto Rico. And I'm thinking, okay, is that a lie, right? Is it truth? Does he believe it? Is it opinion, right? All of these, the nuances of what we say and do, right? It's got me. You could feel however you feel about the moment, but when you start to interrogate what's happening and how we put truth in our art, I think it gets dangerous, because saying that it's truth is trying to justify its existence, right? And saying that something is not true is invalidating something else. Trump is a bad example because everything's like horseshit, but I'm talking about in a day-to-day, I'm talking about with real, normal, sane people as we talk about the idea of truth. You know, what might be true for you in a performance or true for me in a piece or true for what we read or as we talk. You know, there's so many shades and facets to that I've started to, I feel like the word is misused, it's overused, and it's abused. And that there needs to be deeper vocabulary when it comes to describing what we feel and what we know as a personal truth, right? And the respect for the fact that my personal truth may be different from his, hers, or the other. Anyway, it's hazy. More therapy. This feels more like therapy to me, folks, than anything else.
All right, well, now it's your turn. So we'll try and take 2 or 3 questions quickly, and we'll make them questions, please. Start right here. Mike is coming, sorry.
Could you talk about how you view the reduction of the screen and how that informs your work? You talked about the burners, but millennials are increasingly watching all of content on their telephones. Yeah. And I wonder how that affects your work as a filmmaker and an artist.
Wow, thank you. What an amazing question. It's a big topic of conversation among my peers. I was just on a panel 2 days ago with Ted Sarandos, who's the head of Netflix. And, you know, there's a big battle. Big filmmakers like Chris Nolan, who does Interstellar and The Dark Knight, and who had a big hit this summer called Dunkirk. His films are made for the big screen. He wants to use real film, and he wants it to be for the big screen, and that is the vision for his films, and the way that he's made them for that, and anything less than that is a degradation of the art for him. I respect it. I just disagree with it. I've never shot with film. I'm sure it's lovely. But when I start, and it is lovely, of course, I've studied film, but when I can see film and I recognize its texture and I understand the feeling that we all get when we're in the big screen. The big screen is there and you can see everything and the surround sound and you're with people. It's an extraordinary experience. I love film, of course. But it's not a degradation of the cinematic experience to me to also watch a film on an international flight, huddled in my seat on that little screen with the clouds going by, crying over Good Will Hunting, like, Will, go get her, Will. You can have her, you can do this. You know what I mean? Like, it's the story for me. And would I deny those brothers and sisters in prison who can only watch it on this to say that is not the way that I made 13th? I wanted it to be, you know, I would be sitting here cringing. It was a lovely screen, but the quality was a certain, you know, it's not meant for this, right? But I saw it and I was like, great, let's just share the story. You get it, right? So for me, there's a big debate between filmmakers about the presentation of the work, the presentation of the story. But I know that a griot, that storytellers all over the world have told stories sitting up, standing down, with noise around them. The best storytellers can tell it on a crowded bus, at the family dinner, when they're shouting over each other, get their story through. Just tell your story in any medium, in any way you can. And of course, Wrinkle in Time, literally, I was on the phone today with my visual effects supervisor. My visual effects supervisor, Rich McBride, I had to go seek him out because he was the man who made the bear in The Revenant. Did you know that bear wasn't real? In The Revenant, when he wrestles the thing, that's not a real bear. It's a man in a suit, and they made it into a bear. Okay, so he made that. And so I'm on the phone today with him talking about, Tulane was in the room, and she slowly backed out of the room. She's like, this conversation is so nerdy, I have to go. Because I was like, the petal and the flower, it needs a consistency, a texture, such and such. You're never going to see that detail that I'm talking about at home. All this conversation is only for the big screen, which will only probably be viable for 3 months before you never see it on the big screen again. But I still make it that way, knowing that the smaller it gets, the older it gets, the smaller it's going to get, but the love is in the details still. And the story is so strong that it will resonate when you're seeing it in black and white in the year 2079 when we're all not here, right? That hopefully that love that we put into the petals will still come through. I believe it, the energy that we put into it. So anyway, long way to say, I don't care what size it is, although many do, and it's a great debate.
Okay, let's do 2 more questions, but
I promise I'll have shorter answers.
But let's do, we can take 2 questions, and then you can combine.
Yeah, I'm gonna
make a story, you know what I'm saying? Okay, what?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chantel Moses. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being an inspiration. My question for you is, how do you, through it all, through the challenges that you've had, continue to have a smile, continue to break through, continue to just be this incredible force that, because of you and the likes of Issa Rae, I left my corporate job to become an actor. So where do you find your thank you, where do you find your joy?
Well, I'll be really quick. Doing what I love brings me the joy. Look what I get to do. I had a corporate job too. I was a publicist. I love that. But this is a whole different, it elevated my life in so many ways. I get to meet people, talk to people. People watch what comes out of my head. They watch it. When I see that reel, I think, gosh, people take money from their pockets that they worked hard for during the week. They make a decision, I'm going to go see this, or I'm going to watch this on TV. Queen Sugar every Tuesday night, or I can't wait for it to come back, or they stand in line, or it's money. They take their money that they've earned. They woke up in the morning, they went to work, and they took some of that paycheck, and they're to see what was in my mind, in my heart, and what I thought. It's an honor, it's a privilege, it's a mind boggler. When I got here, I said, thank you for coming, because literally I walk in rooms and I'm like, people are here to hear me talk. Still and always, and that is a joy that is singular, and it is deeply rooted in me, and the challenges are all workable, all walk-throughable, because I know through those are rooms like this, really.
And my question is related to that wonderful question, which is, who are you? I mean, where are you from? Who are your people?
Therapy session.
Where, you know, I mean, your sense of coming from something, of coming from people, of coming from community, of coming from something much longer. I'd love to know what you have to say, and then also, what have you created to be from too?
Thank you for that. Wow. You know what? My mother is from Compton and my father is from Lowndes County, Alabama. Lowndes County, Alabama is the county between Selma and Montgomery. When he was 5 years old, he saw Dr. King and the march go by. Lowndes County is called in civil rights circles Bloody Lowndes. There's a book called Bloody Lowndes because there was so much murder and lynching from the black people there who had a revolutionary spirit and wanted to vote and wanted rights, and they sacrificed themselves in ways that haven't been fully documented. That's where my father's from, a quiet, dignified man who just went on to another realm just 2 years ago unexpectedly and left me with a fire that comes from everyone who lived in that place that he carried with him. My mother's from Compton, born in 1954, grew up in Compton, teenager in the 60s, right? Panthers, you know what I mean? Civil rights movement. It wasn't a black community then. It was integrated. To move to Compton was, you're moving to Compton? Okay. Little fancy white community that was starting to become integrated at that time. So within that, a matriarchy. All women in my family except my dad. Quiet, dignified man, smart man, stay to the side. Let them do their thing, right? And so I come from a blackness that was not even touted or talked about, just in here, just in the bones, just in the way we live with each other, and a matriarchy where womanhood and femininity and all those forms and the way that they crossed and clashed with all these women, never talked about it, just was. Both were prioritized. And so that's who I come from. And what I've tried to create on every set and everywhere that I go is a sense of family, because I believe you make better work when you feel comfortable, you know people, and even when there's a tension, there's an intimacy in family, that if you can create it in any room, in any space, you get more out of the experience and more out of the work. And so that's, I believe that because my family is so that. And I believe if I can duplicate that in these pods in which I do work, beautiful things will grow. And so I've never thought about that question. I thank you for asking. This has been the most amazing therapy session I've had. And I just want to thank you all for coming tonight, really.
Thank you,
Truly,
Ava.
thank you for having me.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ava.